it not loud enough?
We're good.
Okay. So you give me the wavy when you're ready to go, and
there it is.
Right. Sounds good. So welcome everyone. We'll call this Committee of Adjustment meeting to order. And
Sorry, Gary's calling me.
Someone's already violating the shut your cell phone rule off.
Sorry, Gary's calling me. Hang on.
Put yourself on mute.
So with that, I'm just gonna, while we're waiting for Gary to see if he's gonna join us, I'm just gonna go through the Committee of Adjustment meetings protocol for this evening, being that's a virtual meeting. Tonight we have 3 applications that we'll be hearing. Following the going through the meetings, we'll talk about the different stages of what's gonna happen tonight. The first order of business will be to ask any members if they have any pecuniary interests or conflicts of interest with any of the applications that we'll be hearing tonight. Following that, a request will be made for any deferrals or withdrawals of the applications on the agenda. The committee's secretary treasurer will read out each application on the agenda, provide a brief description and a staff recommendation. The applicant or the agent for the applicant will be brought into the meeting and introduce themselves. We will confirm at that point if they have any withdrawals of applications that they'll be hearing. And then at that point, they can add any additional comments that they wish to add to that particular application. Following that, members of the committee will then have the opportunity to ask the applicant any questions that they might have. And then following that, members of the public that have registered, and we do have one that did register for some of the applications, that will bring them in at that point so they can ask any comments or questions that they have with regards to that application. Following the members of the public, the committee members will then again have an opportunity to ask any additional questions they have, followed by the applicant to present any final comments that they wish. Following that, the committee members will then present a decision in the form of a motion. The motion will be discussed and voted upon. A tie vote to a motion will be defeated, and a new motion will be made, and we'll continue this process until we have a decision. Notices of motion will only be provided to those persons who leave their name and address with the Secretary Treasurer and the Planning Department. They can contact David Schultz at planner@portcolborne.ca or call and leave a voice message at 905-835-2901 extension 202 immediately following the meeting if they would like to receive written notices of decision. In order to be advised of any possible local planning tribunal appeal hearings, you must request and be sent a copy of the committee's decision. So those are the protocols for this evening.
Dan?
Yes, ma'am?
May I interrupt and just ask you, Gary says he needs somebody to let him into the meeting.
Oh, they just did.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Dan, I do have a conflict if you haven't called for that yet. I'm sorry.
I haven't. We're just about to get to it though, Gary.
Thanks, Dan.
So those are the procedures for this evening. And the first order of business would be to ask for any conflicts of interest. So Gary, I'll go to you.
Thank you. And thanks to the moderator for letting me in. I do have a conflict with the file for Sugarloaf. I'm sorry, I don't have my sheet in front of me, as my son and daughter-in-law live within the circulation area of that application.
Okay, thank you. And just for the record, that's application A0121 PC and A0221 PC.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Does anyone else have any conflicts with the applications this evening? Not seeing any. I don't believe there's any formal requests for deferrals or withdrawals of applications this evening. Mr. Secretary?
No.
Thank you. So with that, we'll turn it over to the first application, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our first application tonight is application number B12-20-PC. In the matter of the Planning Act RSO 1990, Chapter P13, Section 53(1), and in the matter of the vacant lands legally known as part of Lot 1 and on Concession 1, being Part 2 of Plan 59R-5691 on 5685 Michener Road. in the former municipality of Humberstone, now the city of Port Colborne, regional municipality of Niagara. And in the matter of an application by the agent Julian Renault on behalf of the owner Jason Gale for a severance under Section 53(1) of the Planning Act RSO 1990, Chapter P13, so as to permit the conveyance of Part 1, having a lot frontage of 60.1 meters with a total lot area of 1 hectare on Michener Road for a future residential use. Part 2 will retain a lot frontage of 129.5 meters on Michener Road with a total lot area of 21.9 hectares for an existing residential use. Notice was circulated on December 16th, 2020, and the following correspondence has been received from the public. John and Virginia Scarlett, who did not provide an address, they have concerns with the drainage of the property. Lands in the area are heavy clay on rock and water has nowhere to go. Concerns regarding the drainage of this septic system as well. They request the drainage superintendent be involved and they provide input, which has been done and I'll get to momentarily. The farm directly across the road has a livestock barn which requires additional setbacks, and they request that the committee reject the application. The second comment from the public is from a Gary Van Heuven on 386 Holloway Bay Road, who states that the drainage in and around this area is an ongoing concern. With each rainfall, the wetland area fills. The local ditch system does not usher enough water southward to handle this rainfall. The consequence is portions of their backyard flood. Normally it takes a couple days after the rainfall for this process to reverse itself. Already the house on the corner immediately west of the Michener-Holloway Bay intersection has 1/3 of its northeast corner flood during a rainfall, and it impacts their septic system, judging by the smell of the water when it recedes. The third comments received from the public are from a Anne-Marie Lodemez Miller from 454 Holloway Bay Road South, who states that the runoff from this property, once built, has the potential to directly impact on the usage of her property and potentially may pose a further health issue, as they will need to build up the lot to significantly to remain dry. As well, they have no idea how it will impact on future drainage issues, as the previous 2 lots have yet to be constructed. There is standing water year-round in deep ditches in front of her house, which pose a health problem. Due to increased runoff flow and non-maintenance of the ditches, the water is eroding the banks significantly, which in turn will lead to road issues. Their neighbor has a lot that has standing water on it a good portion of the year as the water overflows the banks onto the ditch. There is bedrock beneath a thin layer of soil and nowhere else for the water to go. The 2 original severances will provide additional direct impact on this area of an unknown amount, and adding a 3rd will compound the problem. That's it for the public comments. Notice was circulated to the required agencies, and we have received comments from the engineering department. From the development review side of engineering, it is being requested that a master lot grading plan be required to address the drainage. If the parcels, both existing and new, do not drain independently of one another, it is suggested that a mutual agreement drain be completed and registered on the title of all affected parcels to ensure drainage now and in the future. The parcel is in the watershed of the Point Abano drain, and should a severance be granted, a drainage apportionment agreement will be required. This can be completed either by the drainage superintendent or by an approved engineer of their choice. Should the applicant choose the path of an engineer, any fees associated with this, with the completion of the required apportionment agreement will be borne by the applicant. Additionally, the Point Abano drain is under review. Council has recently appointed an engineer to review a study and complete a new drainage report for the entirety of the Point Abano drain, and the then current owner will be notified of any upcoming meetings. From the Niagara region, we have, to conclude, the proposal is consistent with the PPS and conforms to the intent of the provincial or regional policies for lot creation in the rural area, subject to the conditions below and confirmation from city staff that the lot complies with the minimum distance separation. Regional staff does not object to the proposed consent, subject to the satisfaction of any local requirements and the following conditions, which I will read out at the end. From the NPCA, The NPCA currently has no objections to consent application B12-20-PC. It is of the opinion of the Planning Division that, as discussed in this report, the proposed severance will allow the construction of a future dwelling on Part 1 with the required setbacks and meet the requirements of the City of Port Colborne official plan and zoning bylaw, provided approval can be obtained from the Niagara Region and Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority due to the presence of the highly vulnerable aquifer. Further, the planning staff is expecting comments, which we have received at this time. Yes. So as such, the consent application can be supported, and staff recommend that consent application B12-20-PC be granted subject to the following conditions. 1, that the owner submits a master lot grading plan to the satisfaction of the engineering department to ensure the parcels drain independently. If the parcels do not drain independently, it is suggested that a mutual agreement drain be completed and registered on the title of all affected parcels. 2, that a drainage apportionment agreement be completed by the city's drainage superintendent or by any approved engineer at the cost of the applicant. 3, that the owner enters into a development agreement with the city to be registered against the title of Part 1 to require A, that a Stage 1 and 2 archaeological assessment prepared by a licensed archaeologist be submitted to the Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism, and Culture Industries for review and approval, with a copy provided to the Niagara Region. The report must be accepted by the Ministry to the satisfaction of Niagara Region prior to clearance of this condition. It should be noted that the subsequent Stage 3 and 4 study might be recommended to mitigate any adverse impacts to significant archaeological resources found on the site through preservation or resource removal and documentation. If the licensed archaeologist or the Ministry recommends / requires further, requires further Stage 3 or 4 archaeological assessment, these reports must also be submitted to and accepted by the Ministry to the satisfaction of Niagara Region. Note, no demolition, grading, or other soil disturbances shall take place on the property prior to the issuance of a letter from the Ministry confirming that all archaeological resource concerns have been mitigated and meet licensing and resource conservation requirements. B, inclusion of the following clause. Should deeply buried archaeological remains / resources be found on the property during construction activities, all activities impacting archaeological resources must cease immediately. Notify the Archaeological Programs Unit of the Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism, and Culture Industries, and a licensed archaeologist is required to carry out any archaeological assessment in accordance with the Ontario Heritage Act and the standards and guidelines for consultant archaeologists. In the event that human remains are encountered during construction, all activities must cease immediately, and the local police, as well as the Cemeteries Regulation Unit of the Ministry of Government and Consumer Services, must be contacted. In situations where human remains are associated with archaeological resources, MHSTCI should be notified to ensure that the site is not subject to unlicensed alterations, which would be a contravention to the Ontario Heritage Act. C, the implementation of the recommendations of the hydrogeological assessment prepared by Terra Dynamics Consulting, Inc., including the installation of a septic system with denitrification, 50% reduction in the southeastern portion of the proposed lot, as shown on Figure 6 of the assessment, as well as the use of a cistern for water. 4, that the owner submit a letter to the city indicating that he or she is aware of the requirements of bylaw 4748-130-05, which indicates the collection of the parkland dedication at the time of the building permit application based on the value of the property the day before the issuance of the permit, and that he or she will advise any future purchasers of this requirement. 5, that the applicant provide the Secretary-Treasurer with the deeds in triplicate for conveyance of the subject parcel or a registrable legal description of the subject parcel, together with a copy of the deposited reference plan, if applicable, for use in the issuance of the certificate of consent. And 6, that a final certification fee of $212 payable to the City of Port Colborne be submitted to the Secretary-Treasurer. for the following reasons. 1, the application conforms to the policies of the official plan and will comply with the provisions of zoning bylaw 6575/30/18 as amended. And 2, the decision is rendered having regard to the provisions of subsection 5124 of the Planning Act RSO 1990 CP 13. And that concludes this reading.
Thank you. Can we bring in the applicant, the agent for the applicant? Your mic's on mute, so as soon as you can.
Julian Renault here. Can you see me and or hear me?
We can hear you. We could see an image of you, but not live video. But just before you get started, I just want to confirm that you're not don't want to withdraw your application or defer.
I confirm we don't wish to withdraw the application.
Perfect. We can see you now as well. So
there we are.
Feel free to add any additional comments that you have at this time.
Okay. The applicant agrees with all of the recommendations made by the Department of Planning and Development and the region, and agrees with all the recommendations contained within the hydrogeological report, and will comply with same in order to obtain the severance. And we don't foresee any issues arising from any of that. This is the third severance on this particular parcel of land of the 3 allowed under the official plan. The last 2 have been approved, and this is of course the last that it will be sought on this particular parcel. And should this be approved, then we will comply with all conditions as soon as possible.
All right, thank you. Does any members have any questions for the applicant this evening? Donna?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I just had a question. If I read this properly, this application was denied when the other ones were approved originally a couple years ago. Is that right?
The original application was done before the hydrogeological assessment was performed. I believe, I wasn't around back then, but I believe the issue was there were concerns about that aspect of it, and the desire was to ensure that the site would comply with requirements with respect to septic in particular. And as we see in the Terradynamics Consulting report, there are particular requirements set out. For example, the denitrification is essential. On the very last page, you see the 2 different scenarios that would be present with and without the denitrification, one of which isn't acceptable because you would have more than 10 milligrams per liter of nitrate concentration in groundwater. But with it, then you get below that amount. So this report was conducted to address those concerns, and as a result, we expect that the concerns have been addressed with that report.
So you basically, that was my question. So that was the answer to the concerns that was raised when it was refused the first time, and they've now been addressed. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
All right, Eric?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the planner. Is this a prime agricultural area? Is David here? I don't even know.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Member Beauregard. This is a rural area as defined in the regional official plan and city official plan.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anybody else? Not seeing any. And I don't believe there is any individuals that wish to speak to this application this evening. other than the ones that have commented previously. Can you confirm that? Chris?
Yeah, that's correct. We don't have anybody to submit oral comments.
Okay, thank you. I see Donna, you have your hand up. You have another question?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Just one more question. When I was reading through it, and the first two, I think the severances all happened approximately 5 years ago, is what I'm reading, and nobody has built on those properties as yet. Do we have any stipulations as to how long? I guess I'm looking at other things that we do with the city. Is there a certain time frame? Are they just allowed to sever this and it's private property? You can keep it for as long as you want. It doesn't have to be built on. There's no designation regarding when any of these pieces that we've put in place have to happen, as long as they happen prior to building.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Member Clayliff. There are timelines related to the registration of the parcel to legally create it. However, there's the 1 year time frame for that. However, once that parcel is legally created, there's no requirements for an owner to build on that property within a certain time or anything like that. It can stay there if they wish.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Just before I go back to the agent for the applicant for any closing comments, in one of the correspondence, there was comment about the MDS calculation, or it's too close to the barn across the street. Being that I've been on this committee for a while, I was here when we had those previous severances, all of them. And on the one that was denied, there was also a variance application at that time for that specific reason. So I did confirm with staff earlier that that variance is still in play. So there is a distance to the, I believe it's the barn to the northeast, if I'm not mistaken. I believe the requirement was 86 meters, and I think it got reduced to 84 meters or something like that. It wasn't a very big variance that was required, but that is in place for this particular parcel already. So that issue has already been addressed. So with that, I don't know if anyone else has any other comments. I don't see any hands up. Does the applicant have any final comments that they wish to make?
No further comments on the part of the applicant.
Thank you. Can I look for someone for a motion on this particular application? Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chris, so now just the highlighted yellow in the sample recommendations.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With respect to application B12-20-PC, the matter of 5685 Mitchner Road, the consent application B12-20PC be granted, subject to the conditions outlined in the recommendation in the planning staff memo dated January 11th, 2021. For the following reasons. One, the application conforms to the policies of the official plan and will comply with the provisions of zoning bylaw 6575-30-18 as amended. This decision is rendered having regard to the provisions of subsection 5124 of the Planning Act RSO 1990 CP 13.
Thank you. Can I get a seconder to that? Eric? Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That'd be carried unanimously. Thank you. Mr. Secretary, the next two applications, I'll assume we'll do them together, or do you want to do them separately since they're related to the same?
I'm just going to read them together if that's all right.
That will work. Thank you.
Okay, so our next applications here are application number A01-21-PC and A02-21-PC. In the matter of the Planning Act RSO 1990 CP 13 as amended and section 3.5B2 and 8.4F of the City of Port Colborne zoning bylaw 6575/30/18 as amended. And in the matter of the lands legally known as Lot 207 on Plan 790 in the City of Port Colborne Regional Municipality of Niagara, being located in the 4th Density Residential Zone, municipally known as 433 Sugarloaf Street. And in the matter of an application by the applicant Dul Hassan on behalf of the owner Upstate Realty Corporation for relief from the provisions of zoning bylaw 6575/30/18 as amended. Under Section 45 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990 CP 13, so as to permit the construction of a 3-story, 4-plex residential building at 433 Sugarloaf Street, notwithstanding the following. 1, that a parking area width of 11.64 meters be permitted, whereas a maximum of 5.82 meters is permitted. 2, that a rear yard setback of 4.5 meters be permitted, whereas a minimum of 6 meters is required. Notice was circulated on December 17th, 2020, and the following written correspondence has been received from the public. From Tom and Kelly Porter on 15 Homewood Avenue. They have concerns regarding privacy in the area. Private backyards will no longer be private and will be in full view from the 2nd story and 3rd story living space. The setback reduction will put the buildings closer to their property line, further reducing their privacy. They have safety concerns. 1 parking space per unit is not enough should a tenant own more than 1 vehicle or has visitors. An increase in vehicles and on-street parking could obstruct the view of children and pedestrians crossing the streets. And they have concerns over loss of sunlight. The buildings will cause a shadow over the rear yard of the property for the majority of the day. Notice was also circulated to the required agencies, and we have received comments from the engineering department. Paving the entire frontage of the property could have a negative effect on stormwater drainage involving the adjacent properties and may require an additional structure to catch stormwater flows. Engineering recommends requiring an approved lot grading plan as a condition of granting the minor variance. Planning staff recommend that minor variance applications A1-21-PC and A02-21-PC be granted subject to the following conditions outlined in the recommendation in the planning staff report dated January 7th, 2021. For the following reasons, sorry. 1, it's minor in nature, as the increase in parking area width and reduction in rear yard setback is a reasonable and measured request. 2, it is appropriate for the development of the site since the proposed 4-plex is located in a suitable location on the site. 3, it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, as 4-plexes are permitted in the 4th density residential zone. And 4, it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the official plan, as residential uses are permitted in areas with the urban residential designation. Subject to the following: 1, that a grading plan be submitted to the satisfaction of the engineering department and that written approval be provided to the Secretary Treasurer. And this concludes the correspondence for these 2 applications.
Thank you. Can we bring in the applicant, please, or the agent for the applicant?
Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Just before you get started, I'm assuming you don't want to withdraw or defer your application?
No.
Thank you. Please feel free to add any additional comments you have at this time.
We do not have any additional comments. We will be abiding by the engineering department. We'll be providing a grading plan. We will also take into the to consideration of the neighbor's letter. We will be providing, the building will try to maintain the privacy that they're requesting, and in terms of safety, I have talked to the owner of the land, and they have decided to in the contract to also tell the tenants that they're not allowed to own more than 1 car, which is permitted by the Ontario rental agreement policy. And that's pretty much it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Does any of the members have any questions of the applicant this evening? Oh, and just before we get started, so we can note for the record that Gary has a conflict with this particular application, and I see he has left the meeting. So with that, does any members of the committee have any questions of the applicant this evening? Not seeing any. I know there was one party that had requested to speak to this. I don't know if that party is on the line, if you want to bring them into the meeting at this time.
Yeah, Dave's just going to bring her in right now.
Okay, thank you. You just have to unmute your microphone. There we go.
Okay.
We can hear you.
Okay. My name's Karen Monday. I live at 444 Sugarloaf Street. So my house faces Homewood, and the property is across the street from me. I just have a few concerns. So with the parking space, now maybe the planning person can clarify for me. When I was looking at section 3.2, it indicates that a standard space should have if it's obstructed on one side, that there should be a minimum of 3 meters. Well, if you look at the drawing, parking space number 4, there are steps and a platform, two areas. Now, is that an issue?
Excuse me, just give me 1 second here.
There could be kids coming down the stairs or people walking by.
While he's looking at that, do you have any other questions?
Oh, yes,
maybe
I do.
Lump them all together at the same time.
Section 3.3, accessible parking. Since there's 4 units at this property, now if there's a person that would like to rent a unit that has needs an accessible parking spot, there is not enough room for an accessible parking spot.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
And also, if you have a visitor, the same thing. Well, the visitors wouldn't be able to park in the parking lot.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to
And-
the presenter. Oh, sorry. You can continue if you'd
That's
like.
okay. Good. No, go ahead, David.
Okay. Okay.
Planning staff has reviewed that section of the bylaw for accessible parking, and we have noted it as a change that staff will have to make in the near future to our bylaw. Typically, at least in the research that I've done through other municipalities in Niagara, accessible parking is only required for when there are more spaces. For example, an apartment building where an accessible space would be required. However, they typically have disclaimers for up to 4 units in that sense, just because typically the way it's worded, an accessible space would technically be required for any single detached dwelling as well, built within the parameters, which doesn't really make sense. So I can leave that at that, but that's where our planning staff have decided, and I consulted with the director as well.
Okay, so you wouldn't be able to rent a unit to a person who required an accessible spot then. So you're discriminating against that category of person. Okay, the other thing will be no green space in the front yard at all then. Mr. Hazam?
Just if I might interject there, as far as green spaces go, if there is a requirement to have green space, that would also be a variance in here. Being that there isn't a variance, I'm going to assume that there's no minimum requirement for a green space in the front. The applicant can certainly comment if he wishes.
We tried our best to match the green space that's required, which is the 25% by the zoning bylaw. We do have a 31%, but there is no requirement to have it on the front. So that's why we provided the parkings there. And then the green space will be at the back of the building. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, just another thing here. So for section 3.7, ingress and egress standards, so the driveway width has to be a certain width. So from what I see, so the driveway width is only going to be half, so you wouldn't be able to have two vehicles passing in there.
As far as the requirement, the limit, from what I understand, is 50% of the frontage. And because parking spot 4 is offset a little bit and it's paved right across the width, that's what the variance is for, is to give them that full width of being able to parking. As far as the distance, as far as egress, I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that. If you're referring to specifically the building, that's not a point of discussion for our application this evening.
No, I was just requesting the section 3.7. So basically, when you come out of this driveway, you're going to have a obstructed view because you're going to have people parking on the street. And I realize you're only required to have one spot per unit. So I'm just concerned about the safety of this driveway entrance going out onto the road with cars parked on the street. And that's what's going to happen. And then plus at the corner, you have the stop sign right there. What happens when the house gets built at the corner? Is there going to be a visibility issue at that corner? That's another matter, but just out of, there's a lot of unknown knowns here.
As far as whatever that building lot is on the corner, that third lot, that's not under discussion this evening.
Yeah,
so that would have to be addressed at that point.
A lot of unknowns. Other than that, I guess basically it's going to be a rental unit. Like we really don't know what it's going to be. Is that correct, Mr. Hazem?
Yes, that's correct.
So would there be allowed accessory buildings on this property down the road?
I do not think we're going to be providing accessory dwelling units due to the fact that we've already maxed out on the building coverage.
Okay, I know this has nothing to do with the application, but just as a curious neighbor, where would the refuse be stored? So like the garbage and recycling, is that going to be stored on site, inside?
I'm not aware of that, but I could get the landlord to give me that information.
I feel bad for the people behind there. Like if you put the refuse containers behind the building, then you've got all that smell and everything. And like also, are you going to have a place for storage of bicycles?
The zoning bylaw does not require that, so we did not provide one.
On the sidewalk.
Okay, I guess basically until we see what gets built, there's really not much we can do. But I am concerned about the parking, the safety. You're trying to cramp this big 3-story building into this little spot with all these spaces, potentially with 4 people per unit. So you're talking at least 16 people a building. You got 32 people in like a 75-foot frontage. Whereas if you look down the street, it's a well-established neighborhood, all single detached dwellings. And now we're going to get this 4-plex building here. Anyways, that's just my concerns. I'm very frustrated.
All right, thank you. Does the applicant wish to address any of those issues at this time, other than what they've done already?
In terms of safety, we are allowed street parking. So, and like I said, we're going to limit 1 car per tenant. So hopefully that will reduce the amount of cars in the building. And because there's street parking allowed, we do believe that because a visitor is meant to leave, then they won't be staying there for a while. We will take into consideration about where the location of the garbage bins will be. And in terms of lights, we are trying to match by the zoning bylaw as much as possible. That's why we do require this this minor variance so that we can fit all 4 parking spaces inside the building lot.
Okay. Just for my own question, I know it's a 3-story with a proposed 4-plex. Is the 4th unit in the lower section?
Yes, in the
So it'll be
basement.
kind of like, it'll be a raised section that has adequate egress out of the lower apartment?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you. So with that, Chris, do we have any other people that wish to speak to this application this evening?
No, that's the only one.
Okay. Does any other committee members have any questions at this point? Donna?
Through Mr. Chair, to the planning. So I don't see any elevator here, but so you're saying it's a 3-story, so it's going to be a 2-story walk-up, inside walk-up, I am assuming, from the 2 entrances in the front? Is that how this works?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Member Califf. I don't have the knowledge of what exactly is going to entail in the floor plan. However, I know elevators are typically required through the Ontario Building Code when you reach a certain height or number of floors.
Could I ask Mr. Hassam, is there an elevator in here, or is it just strictly walk-up?
There's no elevator in there. We do have, we are planning on putting in 2 staircase compartments. That's why we need the minor variance for the back, because of the staircase compartments having fire rated. With this height of a building, it still falls under the small building, under the Ontario Building Code, so we do not require an elevator in the building.
All right. Any other members?
Thank you.
Any other members have any questions? Eric?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the planner or to the applicant. So the lot frontage, that it goes up to where the sidewalk currently is, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. So there's still a little bit more space after the sidewalk to the road.
Yes, yeah. I did have a Google Map picture that shows exactly how the road is. I don't know if I could share that image with you.
Okay, so to the road, it would be maybe 2.5 to maybe 3 meters from the parking spot 1 or the entrance to the actual roadway. Would that be correct?
Yes, there is another road there that actually cars have, like in Google Maps, it does show that cars have parked, and it's enough to fit a car. I'm just trying to share the screen here. I'm having a little bit of difficulty. Okay. I don't know if you can see that screen there.
It's coming up there now. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, you can see that we kind of circled that there are cars that have been parked on the street, and there's still enough room. On this side, this is where the building will be. And you can see there's enough room before the road is. And that's the sidewalk there. And that's where I took the dimension of the property from.
Okay. Thank you.
One question that I have is because you're building 2 of these, are they going to be mirrored images or are they going to be identical as far as the layouts go? So in essence, you won't have the parking lots back to back, right? They'll be opposites.
Yeah, we're trying to do opposites just in case where a person decides to park in the middle. That could be a visitor parking because it's the same owner for both lots. So we are going to try to mirror them.
So technically, you'll be able to drive right from parking lot 2 on one side, right across to the parking lot on the other side.
Yes.
Now, what happens if you start to get encroachment from one lot into the other? So if someone parks on one, but their nose sticks over onto the side of the other 2. So now you're going to shorten that parking space up even more.
No, the parking space will be opposite from each other.
Okay, so it'll be, you'll be to the driveway, but you can still drive from one over to the other.
I I believe so. Yes, I'm just trying to pull up that drawing. Yes, you could still do it, but because the parking spaces are being provided on that side, we don't foresee that as a future problem.
Okay. And then the little space on just between lot 1 and where the sidewalk would be, is there going to be curbage put there to keep from parking onto the sidewalk?
Yes, so that's going to be a stone apron so that we don't encourage cars leaving that area. So it's going to be something that the cars cannot go through it. So a stone apron or armor stone, whichever can fit in that little area. I believe it's about 2 feet between that lot line to the start of the first parking lot. So we're going to put something that to avoid cars from going through that area.
Okay. All right. Eric, I see your hand up.
Through you, Mr. Chair. When the owner's intentions are complete in terms of like all the buildings are done, how many units in total will there be? If that makes sense. Sorry, I could have worded that a little bit better.
If we're going to take into account both buildings, there'll be 8 units total.
And is there still another building that's going to be put in after, or is there only just the 2?
Just the 2 on these lots. I don't know about the third lot because I'm not familiar with what they're going to do there.
Okay. Okay.
Any other members have any questions? Does the applicant have any closing comments they wish to make?
No further comments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Does any members have a recommendation for this application? Eric?
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair, can I just, David, would I be able to put both of these into one recommendation?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would make sure that they're clearly delineated between each other, just because there are 2 applications there.
If I just, okay, I'll just do them separately then. Okay. Let me just pull it up. Okay, in application A01-20-PC, lot 207 on plan 790, municipally known as 433 Sugarloaf Street, that minor variance application A01-21-PC be granted subject to the conditions outlined in the recommendation and planning staff report dated January 7, 2021, for the following reasons. 1, it's minor in nature, as the increase in parking area width and reduction in rear yard setback is a reasonable and measured request. 2, appropriate for development of the site since the proposed fourplex is located in a suitable location on the site. 3, desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, as fourplexes are permitted in the 4th density residential zone. 4, desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the official plan, as residential uses are permitted in areas with the urban residential designation.
All right, and a seconder to that one. Donna. Any questions or comments on that particular application? All those in favor? Opposed? That'd be carried. And Eric, if you want to do the next one, please.
No problem, Chair. So application A02-20-PC, lot 208 on plan 790, municipally known as 433 Sugarloaf Street. That minor variance application A02-21-PC be granted subject to the conditions outlined in the recommendation in the planning staff report dated January 7, 2021, for the following reasons. 1, minor in nature, as the increase in parking area width and reduction in rear yard setback is a reasonable and measured request. 2, appropriate for development of the site since the proposed fourplex is located in a suitable location in the site. 3, desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, as fourplexes are permitted in the 4th density residential zone. 4, desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the official plan, as residential uses are permitted in areas with the urban residential designation.
Thank you. And a seconder to that one. Okay, we'll put Angie for the seconder. I could second it, but Angie. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That'll be carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then just wrapping up our agenda this evening. Now, the other business, we have an approval for revised schedule. And quite frankly, I didn't notice what the revision was. Chris, can you elaborate on what the change was?
Yes, we had several conflicts. I think it was with council. WeeStream, yes. So several of the meetings have been moved to Wednesday. That's the only change. I don't have the schedule in front of me, so I don't know what exact days they are. But if you look on the schedule, they've been updated. A few of them have been updated to Wednesday instead of Tuesday.
Oh yeah, okay. I see them there now. March 12th, or sorry, May 12th, July 14th, September 15th, October 13th, and December 8th.
Yeah, there's quite a few of them this year.
Okay. Angie, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I do. Thanks, Dan. I just, I did have a concern with the meeting schedule. I really would prefer it. I know sometimes it's not always possible to get what you prefer, but I would prefer it if we had a consistent night for a meeting on this. It's just easier for keeping schedules when when you've got a lot on your schedule. It's a nice thing to be able to say, the second Tuesday of every month, that's committee of adjustment or whatever, the second Wednesday, however that is. So having some on Tuesday and some on Wednesday are a little bit of a problem. Is there a possibility that we could get either all of them moved to a Wednesday or shift things around again? Or are we still waiting for the new council schedule?
Excuse me, Angie. It's Donna. Gary's asking for Chris to let him back in.
Poor Gary.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Member Desmarais. I will just make a note that because we're on the COVID schedule and we're doing these electronically, it is a challenge to get WeeStream on board and as well with council. So there are some behind the scenes challenges as well. That's the only note I'd make.
Fair enough. I mean, we're going to have what we have. I just was kind of hoping that we would have a constant night that we could say that's committee of adjustment night or that's council night. You know how that is. But okay, that's all I wanted to say on that issue. But I do have something else when we're finished talking about this.
Okay, thank you. Eric, I see you got your hand up.
That's you, Mr. Chair. So would WeeStream have issues on Wednesdays? Because there shouldn't be any other issues, I don't think, if we went steady Wednesdays.
We'd have to check. Brandon is saying that he doesn't probably, but so if that's something that the committee wants to do, we can certainly make that amendment to Wednesdays of every month if everyone's okay with that. But I'll leave that to the committee to decide.
Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Eric's point was the one I wanted to make. With respect, if you're able to talk to Brandon or David, my concern was that if we don't make a decision, somebody might opt in and co-opt that opening if we don't do it first.
For myself, I don't have any issues either way. Wednesdays would work equally as well for me if at the same time. And I do agree consistency is definitely helpful. So I'm assuming these were because council meeting is shifting to their meetings. Is that why it's in conflict with ours?
I think some of that is happening.
Through you, Mr. Chair, with WeeStream, they do have other places that they have to stream as well. So there were conflicts with other councils across Niagara. So not just our council, but for the most part, Wednesday sounds like it's a day that works for everyone.
Okay, and that would just be effective starting that May 12th?
That would be the first one that has changed from a Tuesday to a Wednesday, correct? Okay.
So if everyone's good with that, I think effective that May 12th, or if we can do it sooner, fine, as long as we don't run into a conflict. It's just that we'll be getting close to running into the pre-consultation deadlines and stuff if we go any earlier than that.
Yep.
April would probably be the closest one that we might be able to go to a Wednesday. But otherwise, if everyone's good with from the 12th on Wednesdays, Eric, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, I just want to say also with going to Wednesdays, it gives us counselors a nice like a day in between to focus on this instead of going from dealing with council package to then committee of adjustment. So it gives a nice little, we can put a little bit more attention to it. At least I feel that way.
Good point. Today would have been nice to have off.
Yeah.
We have Brandon here. If you want any questions for him or anything like that from WeeStream, he's willing to chime in, just so we're all on the same page.
Eric?
Should we maybe just give Brandon some time to just make sure that there's no issues with going to Wednesdays? So get back to us, I don't know,
Right away.
maybe next month or the next meeting, or I don't know how we want to do it, but just to confirm that everything's fine with going to Wednesday.
We'll leave it with staff to do it.
Through the chair, this is Brandon, WeeStream. So I've been talking to Amber for quite some time about this schedule just before the end of last year. One of the reasons why we have so many conflicts is that because of COVID, we lost the 2 people that we were training. We can't train anyone new because of the complex setup and the ever-changing people aren't here, they are here, and the complexity of that. So, and Waynfleet is on Tuesdays and Niagara Falls is on Tuesdays. So those conflicts mean that we have Waynfleet and Niagara Falls on those Tuesdays, and that's why we pushed it to the Wednesday. So we have no problem with going forward, even next meeting on Wednesdays for the rest of the year. Just May was the first one that was the conflict. So if you wanted to go March and February, we have nothing on Wednesdays, and we can book that for the year if you want.
I would move that we do.
So that would move, Gary, go ahead.
Well, I was going to second that or say the same as Angie, only because we don't need to worry about what the city is going to do and when it's going to do it.
Yeah.
We can make that decision, lock it in, unless David or planning have an issue. It perhaps is better to get our house in order so that the city then can proceed or not proceed as it sees fit. We're still a master of our own destiny, and we have consistency, and we don't have to worry about holidays anymore.
Well said.
So if David doesn't or Chris don't have any objections, we can accept the proposed. I'll look for motion to accept the proposed schedule moving
Mr. Chair,
starting on March.
Before you do that, we're just going to jump in. We haven't checked for any holidays on Wednesdays. Sometimes there are, very rarely there are holidays on Wednesdays. But in the case that there is, then we will have to reschedule a meeting once we find those out. So if we want to bring forward that, we can finalize that schedule now for every Wednesday. But if there are any changes that need to be made, we'll bring it back to the committee in the future.
Okay.
That'll work, I think.
Yeah.
So effective March the 10th would be the first one on a Wednesday, and then therefore the rest of the year after that, everything will shift by a day as well. And then if everyone's good with that, and then if there's
good.
conflicts after that, then just let us know, and then at the next meeting we can address that at the next meeting.
That'd be great.
That makes sense. So can I look for a mover for that? Angie? Seconder, Gary? Any other questions or comments? So basically accepting the schedule we have, March 10th on, we'll be starting on Wednesdays unless there's another conflict that staff brings up to us. With that, any other questions or comments? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Is there any other business? I think, was it Angie? You said you had something?
Yes, I do. Thanks, Dan. I don't know if anybody else has received a notice that their OACA memberships are expiring.
Yep.
Now, I've had this dealt with differently through the years. There's sometimes when the city would automatically renew it, and last year the city wouldn't automatically renew it. We had to do it individually and then be reimbursed for it. I would just suggest that if there were a way for the city to renew it for all of us, that would make things much simpler for everyone. Instead of doing this couple of step process, it doesn't make sense. Let it come. It's coming up through the city dime anyway, so let them renew them.
Donna?
Through you, Dan. Angie, I actually just had this over the holidays. I decided to renew because I've had so many pieces coming through from them, and it wouldn't take my renewal. It
Yes.
recognized me, it knew me, everything went in. It wouldn't take my money, so I got a hold of. I got a hold of Bill's secretary,
Nancy.
Nancy, and Nancy just did it in a flip. It was done.
Yeah,
She sent me through.
she can do it.
Yeah, I couldn't, but she did, and she got it and sent it through to me. I just sent her an email and I said, Nancy, it's kicking me out. It won't allow me to register. I got right through to the payment 2 or 3 times. It wouldn't take my payment.
So possibly
I think
we
if
could
you go
ask
through
her to
Nancy,
do all
she'll
of ours.
just do it. Yeah.
Yeah, like I say, possibly we could ask her to just do all of ours. Last year, planning couldn't do it.
No, I remember last year I
wouldn't
did it
go through for
myself.
them,
I know.
so
Well, that's why I went
strange
ahead and
thing.
did it. I thought, well, I may as well try, but it would not take it.
For the record, I've already done mine, so.
And were you able to do it yourself, Dan?
I was, yeah.
I did the same.
It
Oh,
got
so
right
you
to
guys
my
are already
credit card,
done.
just kicking it back.
I was hoping Angie would bring this up. I mean, it seems kind of crazy to have
Yeah.
5 submissions every year, paperwork, a check, well, not a check, but a deposit flowing back into our account.
Submitting it, yeah.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
I thought the issue last year was on the OACA side that you had to do it yourself individually or something. That's why it was done that
Well,
way.
that's what planning told us, and
Yes.
it was on the OACA side, and I was able to do it last year myself. This year I had a difficulty, so I thought, we shouldn't be doing this anyway. This should be done. It should be an automatic process. So,
So it looks like the only 2 that are left are Angie and Gary.
And
okay,
Nancy will
I'll
do
call
it for
Nancy
you.
and say, do it, please.
Okay. Eric, you have some other business?
Actually, it's just to the back to the schedule. There's just a little error. If you look at the application submission deadline column and you go to June 4th, it says the year 2000. Well, sorry, 20,201.
Yeah, it'll be a little late.
Interesting.
Be there soon.
I'll meet you there.
Okay, that's all.
Thank you. Any other business? Not seeing any. Can I get a mover and a seconder for the December 8th community adjustment meetings? Eric, Angie, questions or comments? All in favor? That'll be carried. Thank you. If there's nothing else, I'll look for a motion to adjourn. Eric, seconded by Gary. All those in favor? Be carried. Thank you, and we'll see you again next month.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good one.